The sound of metal striking hard earth echoed across the barren Montana landscape as Daisy Blackwood drove her shovel into the unyielding soil, her tears falling onto the growing mound of dirt beside a freshly dug grave. The year was 1878, and the 22-year-old widow had been digging since dawn, her once white dress now stained with red dirt and sweat, her honey-blonde hair falling loose from its pins as dark clouds gathered ominously on the horizon. Isaac Thornton reined in his chestnut stallion at the crest of the hill, his weathered hand pushing back his wide-brimmed hat as he observed the strange sight below. In his 15 years riding the Montana Territory, the 30-year-old cowboy had seen many things, but a beautiful woman digging a grave alone was not among them. The homestead behind her was modest, a small cabin with a barn and corral, the kind of place a man might build with dreams of something greater. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Isaac guided his horse down the slope, approaching slowly to avoid startling the woman. She didn't look up, even as his horse's hooves crunched on the dry grass nearby. Her determination was evident in every thrust of the shovel, every labored breath. "Madam," Isaac called softly, dismounting and keeping a respectful distance. "Storm's coming. Might I offer some assistance?" Daisy whirled around, brandishing the shovel like a weapon, her blue eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "Stay back," she warned, her voice hoarse from crying. "I don't need any help from strangers." Isaac raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. His face was tanned from years under the sun, with kind brown eyes that had seen both beauty and hardship across the frontier. "No harm intended, madam. Just passing through when I saw you working alone. That's a heavy burden for anyone." A small pine box rested nearby, crudely constructed but made with obvious care. Isaac's eyes flickered to it briefly, understanding dawning on his weather-lined face. "My husband," Daisy said, following his gaze, her voice breaking. "Pneumonia took him 3 days ago. I've been trying to." Her words faltered as she gestured helplessly at the half-dug grave. Isaac nodded solemnly. "I'm sorry for your loss, madam. Name's Isaac Thornton. I work cattle for the Triple R Ranch about 20 miles east. I'd consider it an honor if you'd allow me to help you lay your husband to rest before that storm hits." Daisy hesitated, studying the stranger with wary eyes. His clothes were trail-worn but clean enough denim pants, a faded blue shirt with a leather vest, and boots that had seen many miles. No gun belt, she noticed with slight relief. There was something in his steady gaze that conveyed decency, a rarity in these parts. "Daisy Blackwood," she finally replied, lowering the shovel. "My husband was Daniel," her voice caught. "We came out here from Pennsylvania last spring." He wanted to raise horses. Isaac removed his hat in respect. "Mrs. Blackwood, that storm's not waiting on formalities, if you'll allow me." Before she could respond, the first fat raindrops began to fall, quickly turning into a steady downpour. Daisy looked up at the darkening sky, then back at the unfinished grave, despair etching lines into her young face. "Let me help you get him inside for now," Isaac suggested gently. "We can finish this proper when the weather clears." Reluctantly, Daisy nodded. Together, they carefully carried Daniel's simple coffin back to the cabin just as lightning split the sky and thunder crashed overhead. The interior of the cabin was neat, but sparse: a table with 2 chairs, a small cookstove, and a narrow bed. Photographs and a few books were the only personal touches in the humble space. "I'll see to your horse and mine," Isaac said, already heading back out into the downpour. "Then I'll get a fire going if you don't mind." Before Daisy could object, he was gone, leaving her alone with her husband's coffin and the sound of rain hammering against the roof. Through the window, she watched as Isaac led his horse to the barn, moving with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to harsh conditions. When he returned, soaked to the skin, Isaac worked silently and efficiently, building a fire in the small stove and hanging his dripping coat and hat near the door. The warmth slowly began to fill the cabin, highlighting the exhaustion on Daisy's face. "When did you last eat, Mrs. Blackwood?" Isaac asked, noting the dark circles under her eyes. "I don't recall," she admitted, still standing awkwardly near the coffin, as if reluctant to leave her husband's side. Isaac nodded, understanding her grief. Sit, please. I've got provisions in my saddlebag. It's nothing fancy, but it'll sustain you. Too tired to argue, Daisy sank into a chair as Isaac prepared a simple meal of jerky, hardtack, and coffee. The storm outside intensified, rain turning to hail that pounded against the cabin like angry fists. "Looks like I'll be imposing on your hospitality until this passes," Isaac commented, placing a steaming cup before her. "I'll sleep in the barn, of course." "No," Daisy said quickly, surprising herself. "I mean, that won't be necessary. The barn roof leaks something terrible. You can make a pallet here by the fire." The thought of being completely alone with her grief and the howling storm was suddenly unbearable. Isaac nodded, understanding more than she said. "Thank you, madam." As night fell, the storm showed no signs of abating. Isaac fashioned a makeshift bed near the stove, while Daisy retreated behind a hanging sheet to change into her nightclothes. The cabin creaked and groaned under the assault of the elements, but inside, a fragile sense of security had formed. "My Daniel wanted so much for this place," Daisy said softly from her bed, staring at the shadowy ceiling. "He had plans for a horse breeding operation, said the Montana Territory had the best grazing land he'd ever seen." "It's good land," Isaac agreed from his position on the floor. "Takes a special kind of person to tame it, though." "I don't know what I'm going to do now," she admitted, her voice barely audible above the storm. "I can't run this place alone, but I have nowhere to go." Isaac remained silent, sensing she needed to speak more than she needed advice. "We were married just 14 months, Daisy continued. "Barely enough time to know each other properly. His parents disowned him for marrying me. I was just a shopkeeper's daughter with no prospects, and my father died last winter. There's no one left. The territory's harsh, Mrs. Blackwood, but it's also full of possibilities," Isaac finally said. "Maybe wait until your grief isn't so raw before making any decisions." Daisy turned toward the wall, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "Thank you for your kindness today, Mr. Thornton. It's more than I expected from a stranger." "Get some rest," Isaac replied gently. "Tomorrow, we'll lay your husband to rest proper, and then we'll figure out the next step." The storm raged through the night, but eventually, Daisy fell into an exhausted sleep, the first real rest she'd had since Daniel took ill. Isaac remained awake longer, listening to the symphony of rain and wind, thinking about the unexpected turn his journey had taken and the grieving woman whose path had crossed his own. Morning brought a transformed landscape, mud everywhere, but clear skies that promised a fair day ahead. Isaac was already outside when Daisy emerged from the cabin, having prepared a simple breakfast and resumed work on the grave, which had partially filled with water overnight. "I hope you don't mind," he said, pausing in his digging. "Thought I'd get an early start." Daisy shook her head, clutching a shawl around her shoulders against the morning chill. "Thank you. I'll fetch Daniel's Bible. He'd want to be buried with it." The burial was a simple affair. Isaac had lined the grave with stones to prevent the sides from collapsing in the sodden earth. Together, they lowered Daniel's coffin into its final resting place. Daisy read a passage from his Bible, her voice trembling but determined, while Isaac stood respectfully with his hat in his hands. "I should say something about him," Daisy said uncertainly when she finished reading. "That's what people do, isn't it? Say what's in your heart," Isaac suggested. "No one here to judge the rightness of it." Daisy nodded, gathering her courage. Daniel Blackwood was a dreamer. He saw possibilities where others saw only wilderness. He was kind and hardworking, and believed that tomorrow would always be better than today. Her voice broke. He didn't deserve to die so young with his dreams unfulfilled. As she fell silent, Isaac began to fill in the grave, each shovelful of earth falling with a finality that made Daisy's heart ache anew. When he finished, he fashioned a crude cross from 2 pieces of wood he'd prepared earlier, driving it deep into the mound of fresh earth. "I can carve his name properly if you'd like," Isaac offered. "Won't take but an hour or so." Daisy nodded gratefully, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of what had happened. Her legs gave way, and she sank to the ground beside the grave, sobs racking her slender frame. Isaac knelt beside her, awkwardly placing a hand on her shoulder. "Let it come, Mrs. Blackwood. Grief needs its time, same as anything else in this life." They remained there until Daisy's tears subsided, the sun climbing higher in the sky, drying the muddy earth around them. Finally, she rose, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I need to thank you properly, Mr. Thornton. You've been more than kind to a stranger." "No thanks needed," Isaac replied, standing and retrieving his hat. "Anyone would have done the same." Daisy shook her head. "No, they wouldn't. Not in this territory. I've learned that much in my time here." Isaac studied the homestead thoughtfully. "Your supplies holding up all right. Winter's not far off." The question startled Daisy, who hadn't thought beyond the immediate crisis of her husband's death. I'm not sure. Daniel handled those matters. If you don't mind, I could take stock of what you have. Might give you a clearer picture of your situation." Grateful for the practical assistance, Daisy agreed. The next few hours were spent cataloging supplies in the root cellar, barn, and cabin. The inventory revealed what Isaac had suspected: the homestead was woefully underprepared for the harsh Montana winter ahead. "You've got maybe a month's worth of provisions," Isaac explained gently as they sat at the small table. "The garden's in decent shape, but it won't yield enough to see you through to spring." Daisy's face paled. "What options do I have?" Isaac removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. "You could sell the place, though you won't get much this time of year. Head back east before the mountain passes close." He hesitated. "Or you could try to make it work, but you'd need help and supplies." "I have no money to hire help," Daisy admitted, "and nowhere to go if I sold. This place, meager as it is all I have left." Isaac nodded thoughtfully. "I'm between jobs at the moment. Triple R let some hands go after the last cattle drive." He cleared his throat. "I could stay on a while, help you get situated for winter, maybe break some of those wild horses your husband collected. Come spring, you'd be in a better position to decide your future." Daisy stared at him, suspicious of his motives. "Why would you do that? You don't know me." "I know what it's like to be alone against the elements," Isaac replied simply. "Lost my own family to influenza back in '68. If someone had offered me a helping hand then, I might have taken a different path." "I couldn't pay you," Daisy insisted. "Room and board would suffice for now, and maybe a share in any horses we managed to break and sell." Isaac shrugged. "Truth is, Mrs. Blackwood, I've been riding from ranch to ranch for 15 years. The idea of staying in one place for a while has its appeal." Daisy studied him, weighing his offer against her dire circumstances. Every instinct told her to be wary of a strange man's kindness, but desperation was a powerful motivator. "1 month," she finally said. "We'll see how things stand then." Isaac nodded, extending his hand. 1 month. As they shook on their arrangement, neither could have predicted how completely their lives would intertwine in the days ahead, nor how the seasons of grief and healing would transform them both. The first week passed in a flurry of activity. Isaac repaired the leaking barn roof, reinforced the corral fences, and began assessing the small herd of wild horses Daniel had managed to capture before his illness. Daisy focused on harvesting the garden, preserving what she could for the winter months ahead. They established a cautious rhythm, taking meals together but maintaining a respectful distance otherwise. Isaac slept in the newly repaired barn, rising before dawn each day to begin his work, while Daisy kept to the cabin, occasionally venturing out to tend to the chickens or garden. On the 8th day, Isaac approached the cabin during the midday meal, his expression serious. "Mrs. Blackwood, I need to ride into town for supplies. We're going to need more than what's here if we're to make it through winter." Daisy nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "Of course." Gallatin is about 4 hours' ride. There's a general store run by Mr. Finch. He knew Daniel. "I was thinking you might want to come along," Isaac suggested. "Get a change of scenery, and you'd know better what household items are needed." The invitation surprised Daisy, who hadn't left the homestead since Daniel fell ill nearly 2 weeks ago. The thought of facing people, their pity and questions, made her stomach knot with anxiety. "I don't think I'm ready," she admitted. Isaac nodded, understanding in his eyes. "All right. I'll make a list and you can add to it." As he turned to leave, Daisy surprised herself by calling after him. "Wait, perhaps you're right. I can't hide away forever." The journey to town was largely silent, with Daisy riding Daniel's gentle mare beside Isaac on his stallion. The trail wound through rolling hills and across shallow streams, the landscape showing the first hints of autumn's approach. "You ride well," Isaac observed as they forded a creek. "Been on horseback long, since childhood," Daisy replied. "My father kept a horse for deliveries at his shop. He taught me when I was barely tall enough to reach the stirrups." Isaac smiled, a rare expression that transformed his weathered face. "My father was the same, said a person wasn't whole until they could communicate with a horse." "Daniel used to say something similar," Daisy said softly, the memory bringing both pain and a strange comfort. "He believed horses could sense a person's true character." "Wise man," Isaac commented. "I've known horses with better judgment than most people I've met." Their arrival in Gallatin caused the stir Daisy had dreaded. The small frontier town consisted of little more than a main street with a general store, saloon, livery, and a handful of other businesses. As they tied their horses outside Finch's general store, curious eyes followed their movements. "Mrs. Blackwood," called Martha Finch, the storekeeper's wife, hurrying from behind the counter. "We heard about Daniel. I'm so terribly sorry for your loss." Daisy accepted the woman's embrace stiffly, nodding her thanks. "This is Mr. Thornton," she introduced. "He's helping me with the homestead for a while." Martha's eyebrows rose slightly as she assessed Isaac, who tipped his hat politely. "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Finch. We've come for supplies." While Isaac discussed flour, coffee, and other staples with Mr. Finch, Martha drew Daisy aside. "Are you certain it's wise, dear?" she whispered. "A young widow alone with a strange man. People will talk." "People always talk," Daisy replied with unexpected firmness, "but I'm more concerned with surviving the winter." Martha looked unconvinced but didn't press further. As they gathered their supplies, other townspeople approached, offering condolences and not so subtle inquiries about Isaac's presence. By the time they loaded their purchases onto the pack horses Isaac had brought along, Daisy was exhausted from the emotional toll of the interactions. "We could stay at the boarding house," Isaac offered, noting her fatigue. "Head back in the morning." Daisy shook her head. "I'd rather face the ride than more questions." They were nearly out of town when a voice called out, stopping them. "Mrs. Blackwood, a moment, please." Daisy turned to see Reverend Walsh approaching, his round face concerned beneath his balding head. "I was distressed to hear of Daniel's passing from the Finches," he said. "I would have come to perform a proper service had I known." "It was sudden," Daisy replied, "and with the storm." The Reverend nodded sympathetically before turning his attention to Isaac. "And you are Isaac Thornton, Reverend, just lending a hand at the Blackwood place." "I see." The Reverend's tone conveyed that he saw perhaps more than was there. "Mrs. Blackwood, if you need anything at all, the church stands ready to assist. Perhaps we could find a more suitable arrangement for your situation." Daisy straightened in her saddle. "Thank you, Reverend, but Mr. Thornton and I have matters well in hand. Good day." As they rode away, Isaac remained silent until they were well beyond the town limits. "Small towns have long memories and longer tongues," he finally remarked. "I'm sorry if my presence is causing difficulties." "Their opinions matter little to me," Daisy responded, though the flush on her cheek suggested otherwise. "I'm doing what's necessary to survive." The return journey was completed mostly in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. As the homestead came into view in the fading light, Daisy felt an unexpected sense of relief. Despite everything, this place had become home. Over the next 2 weeks, their routine expanded and deepened. Isaac began working with the wild horses, his patience and skill evident as he slowly gained their trust. Daisy found herself watching from the cabin window, admiring his gentle but firm approach with the animals. One evening, as they shared a simple stew made from garden vegetables and rabbit Isaac had trapped, Daisy broke their usual mealtime silence. "Where did you learn to handle horses like that?" Isaac looked up, surprised by her interest. "My father raised quarter horses in Texas before the war. I grew up learning his methods." "What happened to his ranch?" Daisy asked. A shadow crossed Isaac's face. "Union soldiers burned it during the war. My father never recovered from the loss. After my mother and sisters died from influenza, he just gave up. I've been drifting ever since." "I'm sorry," Daisy said softly. It seems we've both lost more than our share. Isaac nodded, returning to his stew. Life on the frontier demands its pound of flesh, but it gives opportunities too for those willing to work. Daniel used to say something similar, Daisy mused. He believed in the promise of this land, despite its hardships. He chose well, Isaac commented. This valley has good water, decent soil, protected from the worst of the winter winds by those ridges to the north. You think it could be successful, the horse breeding operation he dreamed of? Isaac considered the question seriously. With time and work, yes. Those Mustangs you've got have good lines, strong legs, broad chests. Mix them with a quality stallion for refinement and you'd have stock worth selling. For the first time since Daniel's death, Daisy felt a flicker of hope about the future. I know nothing about breeding horses, she admitted. I do, Isaac said simply. Something to consider when our month is up. The next day brought the first snow flurries of the season, a stark reminder that winter was approaching faster than anticipated. Isaac doubled his efforts on the barn and corral, ensuring the structures would withstand heavy snow. Daisy worked alongside him, handing up tools as he repaired the roof, their partnership becoming more natural with each passing day. We should bring in more firewood tomorrow, Isaac called down as he hammered a loose board. That stand of pine to the east would yield good burning logs. I'll help, Daisy offered. Daniel showed me how to use the axe last winter. Isaac paused, looking down at her with concern. It's hard work, Mrs. Blackwood. So is surviving out here, she replied with newfound determination. And please, after all this time, you might as well call me Daisy. Isaac's expression softened. Daisy, then, and I'm Isaac, not Mr. Thornton. Something shifted between them that afternoon, a formality dropped, a distance narrowed. As they worked side by side in the days that followed, cutting and stacking wood, preparing the homestead for winter's onslaught, they began sharing more of their histories, their dreams, their disappointments. Daisy learned that Isaac had fought briefly for the Confederacy before deserting, unable to reconcile the cause with his own moral compass. He'd wandered westward afterward, working cattle drives and breaking horses from Texas to Montana, never staying in one place long enough to put down roots. In turn, Isaac discovered that Daisy had been educated beyond most women of her station, her father insisting she learn mathematics and literature alongside more traditional female accomplishments. She'd met Daniel when he came to her father's hardware store in Pennsylvania, enchanted by his visions of Western opportunity. He talked about Montana as if it were paradise. Daisy recalled one evening as they sat by the fire, the first serious snowfall blanketing the world outside. Said a person could reinvent themselves here, away from the strictures of Eastern society. Was that what you wanted, to reinvent yourself? Isaac asked, whittling a piece of wood as they talked. Daisy considered the question. I wanted adventure, I suppose. My life in Pennsylvania felt predetermined. Marriage to a local boy, children growing old in the same town where I was born. She stared into the flames. When Daniel proposed this wild scheme, something in me responded. I loved him for his dreams as much as anything else. Isaac nodded thoughtfully. Dreams are powerful things. They can sustain us through hardship or break us when they shatter. Is that why you've avoided putting down roots? Fear of broken dreams? The question struck closer to home than Isaac expected. Perhaps, he admitted. Or maybe I just haven't found the right place to plant them. Their gazes met across the firelit room, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Both recognized the dangerous territory their conversation was approaching too soon after Daniel's death, too complicated by their circumstances. It's getting late, Daisy said softly, rising from her chair. Tomorrow will be another long day. Isaac nodded, returning to his whittling. Good night, Daisy. Good night, Isaac. As November deepened, so did the snow and their reliance on each other. The agreed-upon month passed without mention from either of them, their arrangement evolving naturally into a partnership of necessity and growing affection, though neither acknowledged the latter. Isaac had successfully broken 2 of the Mustangs to saddle, gentle enough for Daisy to ride. On a rare clear day, he suggested they check the property boundaries, concerned about potential drifts blocking access to the stream that served as their water source. They rode side by side through snow-laden pine trees, their breath forming clouds in the crisp air. Isaac pointed out animal tracks: deer, rabbit, the occasional wolf, teaching Daisy to read the story written in the snow. Spring will bring new life to the valley, he observed as they paused atop a ridge overlooking the homestead. Those meadows to the south would support twice the horses you have now. Daisy studied him, noting how he spoke of the future as if he might be part of it. Are you making plans, Isaac? He met her gaze, his expression unreadable, just observations. Before she could respond, the crack of a rifle echoed through the valley, followed by Isaac's shout of pain. His horse reared as he clutched his left arm, blood seeping through his fingers and staining the snow beneath them. Ride, he commanded, drawing his own pistol with his good hand. Back to the cabin. Now, terrified, Daisy hesitated only briefly before spurring her horse down the slope, hearing Isaac following close behind. 2 more shots rang out, splintering tree trunks nearby as they galloped toward the safety of the homestead. They reached the cabin in minutes, dismounting hastily and leading the horses into the barn. Isaac leaned heavily against the wall, his face pale beneath his tan. Rustlers, most likely, he explained through gritted teeth as Daisy helped him into the cabin. Saw our horses, thought they'd help themselves. Sit, Daisy ordered, her fear transforming into purposeful action. She retrieved clean cloths and her sewing basket, along with a bottle of whiskey Daniel had kept for medicinal purposes. Let me see. Isaac removed his coat and rolled up his sleeve, revealing a bloody furrow along his upper arm where the bullet had grazed him. Not too deep, he assessed. Won't need stitching. I'll be the judge of that, Daisy replied, cleaning the wound with whiskey. Isaac hissed, but remained still under her ministrations. You're right, she conceded after examining the injury closely, but it needs binding to prevent infection. As she wrapped his arm with clean strips of cloth, their faces were inches apart. Isaac watched her, noting the concentration in her blue eyes, the gentle competence of her hands. You'd have made a good doctor, he commented. I considered it once, Daisy admitted, before I realized women aren't welcome in medical colleges. Their loss, Isaac said softly. When she finished, Daisy remained close, her hand resting lightly on his bandaged arm. Thank you, she said, for protecting me out there. I'd never let harm come to you, Isaac replied, his voice low and earnest, the moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken feelings. Slowly, inevitably, Isaac leaned forward, his good hand coming up to touch her cheek. Daisy didn't pull away, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of fear and longing. Their lips met softly, hesitantly, a brief touch that nonetheless sent warmth cascading through them both. Daisy pulled back first, her cheeks flushed, confusion evident on her face. I'm sorry, Isaac said immediately. That was inappropriate. No, Daisy whispered. It wasn't that, it's just… She stood abruptly, moving to the window. Daniel's only been gone 6 weeks, I feel disloyal. Isaac remained seated, giving her space. I understand. There's no rush, Daisy, no expectations. She turned back to him, tears glistening in her eyes. What is happening between us, Isaac? I barely know you, and yet I feel like I've known you all my life, he finished for her. I can't explain it either, but I know that being here with you feels right in a way nothing has before. Daisy wiped her eyes. We should check if those rustlers are still about, she said, changing the subject. It's not safe if they know we're here alone. Isaac nodded, accepting her retreat. I'll take first watch. You try to rest. That night, as snow fell heavily outside, they maintained their separate spaces, Daisy in the cabin, Isaac in the barn, but something had shifted irrevocably between them. The kiss, brief as it was, had acknowledged feelings they'd both been trying to ignore. The rustlers didn't return, but the incident created a new awareness of their vulnerability. Isaac began teaching Daisy to shoot, using Daniel's old rifle. She proved a quick study, her natural determination making up for her lack of experience. Keep both eyes open, Isaac instructed as they practiced with targets set up behind the barn. Breathe in, then squeeze the trigger as you exhale. Daisy followed his guidance, the rifle kicking against her shoulder as she fired. The can she'd been aiming at flew off the fence post, drawing a rare whoop of delight from her. I did it, she exclaimed, turning to Isaac with a brilliant smile that transformed her face. Isaac couldn't help but smile back, captivated by this glimpse of the woman she might have been before grief claimed her. "You're a natural," he praised. As December arrived, bringing Christmas preparations and deeper snow, the homestead took on a different character. Daisy hung simple decorations, pine boughs and dried berries, making the cabin feel more like a home than it had since Daniel's death. Isaac found himself carving small gifts in the evenings, a set of wooden hair combs for Daisy, a tiny horse figurine that captured the likeness of her mare. He worked on them secretly, wanting to surprise her on Christmas morning. One evening, as they shared coffee after dinner, Daisy broached the subject they'd been avoiding since their kiss. "Your arm has healed well," she observed. "You could leave now if you wanted." "The pass to Gallatin is still open." Isaac set down his cup. "Is that what you want, for me to leave?" Daisy met his gaze directly. "No, but I need to understand what you want, Isaac. You came here to help a stranger through a crisis. That crisis has passed, yet you remain." "I remain because I want to be here," Isaac replied simply. "Because in all my years of wandering, I've never felt as at peace as I do in this valley. With you," Daisy's breath caught. "And what happens when spring comes? Will the wanderlust take you again?" "Not if I have a reason to stay," he said softly. Understanding passed between them, not a declaration exactly, but a possibility opened. Daisy nodded slowly. "Then stay through winter. Help me build Daniel's dream, and when spring comes, we'll see where we stand." Christmas morning dawned clear and cold, the sun turning the snow-covered landscape into a sea of diamonds. Isaac rose early, tending the animals before approaching the cabin with his carefully wrapped gifts and a fresh rabbit for their holiday meal. Daisy welcomed him with shy warmth, her own gift a knitted scarf in deep blue presented with nervous hands. "It's not much," she apologized. "My mother taught me to knit, but I've never been particularly skilled." Isaac wrapped it around his neck immediately, touched by the hours of work it represented. "It's perfect," he assured her, presenting his own offerings. Daisy's delight at the carved combs and horse figurine was genuine, her fingers tracing the delicate details with wonder. "These are beautiful, Isaac. I've never received anything so thoughtful." Their Christmas dinner was simple but festive: rabbit stew, preserved vegetables from the garden, and a small cake Daisy had managed with their precious supply of sugar. As they ate, they shared stories of holidays past. Isaac describing the grand celebrations at his family's Texas ranch before the war, Daisy recounting the modest but loving traditions of her childhood home. As twilight fell, they sat before the fire, the comfortable silence between them broken only by the crackling of logs. Outside, snow began falling again, isolating them further from the world beyond their valley. "I've been thinking about the horses," Daisy said finally. "About what you said regarding breeding stock." Isaac nodded encouragingly. "They have potential. If we sold one of the trained geldings in spring, we could perhaps purchase a quality stallion," she continued. "Begin building the bloodlines Daniel envisioned." "We could," Isaac agreed, noting her use of "we" with quiet satisfaction. "There's a breeder near Helena with thoroughbred stock that would cross well with your Mustangs." As they discussed plans for the spring planting and expanded corrals, the future gradually took shape between them, a future that included them both, working side by side to build something lasting in this remote valley. When Daisy finally rose to retire for the night, she hesitated, her hand resting briefly on Isaac's shoulder. "Merry Christmas, Isaac." He covered her hand with his own. "Merry Christmas, Daisy." January brought the harshest, weather-yet blizzards that confined them to the homestead for days at a time, temperatures that froze water buckets solid within hours. Yet inside the cabin, warmth prevailed. Their evenings were filled with conversation. Isaac teaching Daisy card games, Daisy reading aloud from her small collection of books. During one particularly fierce storm, as wind howled around the cabin like hungry wolves, Daisy found herself sharing memories of Daniel that had previously been too painful to voice. "He sang terribly," she recalled with a small smile. "Couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, but he'd sing at the top of his lungs while he worked, said music made labor lighter." Isaac listened attentively, understanding her need to preserve these memories. "He sounds like a good man." "He was," Daisy affirmed. Stubborn and sometimes impractical, but kind and full of life. She paused, studying the flames. I think he would approve of you being here. He always said a person's character showed in how they treated those who could offer them nothing in return. You've offered me plenty, Isaac countered. A purpose, a place to belong, even temporarily. Daisy's gaze lifted to his. Is it still temporary, Isaac? The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Isaac set aside the bridle he'd been repairing and moved to sit beside her on the small sofa. Not in my heart, he admitted quietly, but I would never presume. Daisy's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. I've been thinking about Daniel's dreams for this place, she said, and I've realized something important. They were his dreams, not mine. I followed him here because I loved him, but I never truly shared his vision. And now, Isaac prompted gently, now I'm finding my own dreams, she replied. Dreams that include this land, these horses, and you, Isaac, if you want to be part of them. In answer, Isaac leaned forward, capturing her lips in a kiss that held none of the hesitation of their first. Daisy responded with equal fervor, her arms encircling his neck as months of suppressed feelings found expression. When they finally parted, both breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. I've been falling in love with you since I found you digging that grave, he confessed, but I never expected you to return those feelings. Neither did I, Daisy admitted. I thought my heart was buried with Daniel, but you've shown me it's possible to honor his memory while still embracing life, still embracing love. Their courtship unfolded slowly throughout the remainder of winter, each day bringing new discoveries about one another. Isaac proved to be a man of surprising depths, well-read despite his lack of formal education, thoughtful in his perspectives on everything from politics to philosophy. Daisy revealed a quick wit and resourcefulness that continually impressed him, along with a determination to master every aspect of running the homestead. By February, they had established new sleeping arrangements, Isaac taking Daniel's place in the cabin, but respecting Daisy's wish to wait for proper marriage before sharing her bed. Their days fell into a pleasant rhythm of shared work and companionship, their evenings filled with plans for the spring to come. We should expand the garden, Daisy suggested one night as they reviewed their dwindling supplies. Plant more root vegetables that store well through winter. And we'll need to reinforce the north pasture fence, Isaac added. Once those mares foal in spring, we'll need secure grazing areas. Their use of "we" had become natural, their future together assumed rather than questioned. Yet neither had spoken directly of marriage, both sensitive to the shadow of Daniel's memory and the potential judgment of the community. The decision was forced upon them in early March when a spring thaw made the trail to Gallatin passable for the first time in months. Their supplies critically low, they made the journey together, prepared for the town's reaction to their obviously changed relationship. Martha Finch's eyebrows nearly reached her hairline when they entered the general store together, Isaac's protective stance beside Daisy making their connection clear to anyone with eyes. Mrs. Blackwood, Martha greeted, her tone carefully neutral. Mr. Thornton. We weren't certain you'd survived the winter, being so isolated out there. We managed well enough, Daisy replied calmly, handing over her list of needed supplies. As Mr. Finch gathered their order, Martha leaned across the counter. Reverend Walsh has been asking after you, she informed Daisy in a lowered voice. Concerned about your situation, there's been talk. Has there? Daisy responded, her spine straightening. Well, you can tell the good Reverend that Mr. Thornton and I intend to speak with him today about formalizing our arrangement. Isaac turned to her in surprise, this being the first he'd heard of such plans. Daisy met his gaze steadily, a question in her eyes. He nodded once, a smile spreading across his face. Indeed, he confirmed to Martha. If the Reverend is available, we'd be obliged to speak with him this afternoon. Martha's expression shifted from scandalized to calculating. Well, that certainly changes matters. I'll send my boy to fetch him directly. As the storekeeper's wife hurried away, Isaac took Daisy's hand. Are you certain? There's no rush. I'm certain, Daisy replied firmly. Unless you've changed your mind, Isaac's answer was a brief, fervent kiss that set tongues wagging throughout Gallatin for weeks afterward. They were married that very afternoon in Reverend Walsh's small church, with the Finches serving as witnesses. The ceremony was simple, the Reverend's relief at restoring propriety evident in his enthusiastic blessing of their union. I, Isaac James Thornton, take thee, Daisy Elizabeth Blackwood, to be my lawfully wedded wife, Isaac vowed, his voice steady and sure. To have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. Daisy's response was equally firm, her eyes never leaving his as she pledged herself to him. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was brief but filled with promise, not the first flames of passion, but the steady heat of a love built on friendship, respect, and shared purpose. They spent their wedding night at Gallatin's small hotel, finally consummating the feelings that had grown between them over the long winter months. In the privacy of their rented room, Isaac's tenderness and Daisy's eager responsiveness created a union as meaningful as their spoken vows. "I never expected to find you," Isaac murmured as they lay together afterward, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "When I rode into that valley and saw you digging that grave, I thought I was just helping a stranger through a storm. And now?" Daisy asked, raising herself on one elbow to look into his eyes. "Now I know I was finding my way home," he replied simply. Spring brought new life to the Thornton homestead, as they now called it. The mares foaled successfully, adding 5 healthy colts and fillies to their growing herd. The garden flourished under Daisy's care, expanded to include medicinal herbs alongside vegetables. With the proceeds from selling 2 trained geldings, they purchased a handsome, thoroughbred stallion from the breeder near Helena, the cornerstone of the breeding program they envisioned. Isaac's expertise with horses proved invaluable as they built their reputation for quality stock, drawing buyers from as far as Wyoming and Idaho. Their first anniversary found Daisy with another secret to share. As they sat on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching the sunset paint the valley in gold and crimson, she took Isaac's hand and placed it gently on her still flat stomach. "Come November, there will be 3 of us," she said softly. Joy transformed Isaac's face as he gathered her into his arms. "A child," he whispered against her hair. "Our child. Our future," Daisy corrected, her heart full as she gazed out at the homestead they had built together. Daniel's grave remained on the hill, tended regularly, and marked now with a proper headstone, a respectful acknowledgement of the past that had brought them to this present. As darkness fell and stars appeared above the Montana Valley, Isaac and Daisy Thornton returned to the warmth of their home, secure in the knowledge that the storms of grief and nature had been weathered together, leaving behind a love as enduring as the land itself. 5 years later, their homestead had transformed into a prosperous ranch. The Thornton horse breeding operation had gained renown throughout the territory for its quality stock, a blend of Mustang hardiness and thoroughbred refinement that suited the demands of Western riders. The cabin had been expanded into a proper ranch house, with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides and large windows that caught the mountain light. Inside, the sounds of children's laughter filled rooms that once held only grief and solitude. 4-year-old Daniel Isaac Thornton, named for the husband Daisy had lost, and the man who had helped her rebuild her life, raced through the house with his 2-year-old sister, Emma Rose, toddling determinedly after him. Their infant brother, James, slept peacefully in a cradle. Daisy had positioned near the kitchen window, allowing her to watch over him while she prepared the evening meal. Isaac entered from the barn, stomping snow from his boots. Winter came early in 1883, with October bringing the first serious snowfall. The years of outdoor work had added silver threads to his dark hair at the temples, but had only deepened the connection between him and the land he now called home. "Visitors coming," he announced, lifting Daniel into his arms while Emma clutched at his legs. "Riders from the Triple R, bringing that mare they want bred to Monarch in the spring." Daisy nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'll set extra places for supper. Will they stay the night?" likely. Snow's getting heavier. Isaac set Daniel down with instructions to help his sister feed the chickens before supper, watching with pride as the boy carefully took his sister's hand and led her toward the pantry for the corn. As the children busied themselves with their chore, Isaac moved to stand behind Daisy, his arms encircling her waist as she worked at the stove. "Have I told you today how much I love you, Mrs. Thornton?" he murmured against her ear. Daisy leaned back into his embrace, a smile touching her lips. "Only twice so far. You're falling behind." Isaac chuckled, turning her in his arms to kiss her properly. 5 years of marriage had only deepened their connection, the passion between them tempered but not diminished by the demands of family and ranch life. "I love you," he said when they parted. "More with each passing day." "And I love you," Daisy replied softly. "My unexpected blessing." That evening, with their guests settled in the new guest room and their children asleep, Isaac and Daisy stood on the porch, watching the snow fall in the lantern light. From this vantage point, they could just make out the small, fenced area on the hill where Daniel Blackwood's grave lay alongside those of 2 beloved horses they'd lost over the years. Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you hadn't ridden into the valley that day? Daisy asked, leaning against Isaac's solid warmth. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I look at you, at our children, at everything we've built together, and I know it couldn't have been any other way. Some trails are meant to be followed, no matter how unexpected." Daisy nodded, understanding completely. The grief that had once seemed unbearable had transformed over time, not vanishing, but becoming part of the foundation upon which they had built their life together. Daniel's memory remained honored, his dreams partially realized through their efforts, even as they had created dreams of their own. "Come inside, husband," Daisy said, taking Isaac's hand. "The storm's picking up, but we're exactly where we're meant to be." Together, they returned to the warmth of their home, the wind and snow swirling harmlessly around the sturdy walls that sheltered their family, a testament to love's ability to bloom even in the aftermath of loss, and to the healing power of 2 hearts finding unexpected home in each other.